All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about a skill that I learned from professional gamers that has helped me really accelerate progress in all sorts of different areas in my life. And it's actually an interesting skill because it's talking about looking backwards and reflecting. So as we kind of close out the year here in 2025, I'm going to talk in this video about the power of kind of looking backwards and reflecting on moments in your life and how that contributes to making progress in the future. And next week, we'll dive into how to set future goals so that you can plan for the future and make the most of your time. So with that, let's kind of talk about this. And I want to really hone the point in here that most people that are incredibly talented at stuff, especially when it comes to things like athletics, professional gaming, or any really high intensity kind of performance based activities, typically reflect on things and are obsessive almost about mistakes that they may have made while performing those activities in high performance environments, and kind of watching back footage of themselves or assessing how things could have gone differently regardless of how well the performance or the outcome actually occurred. So this is something that I kind of learned from my time playing the Pokemon trading card game at the highest levels as a professional Pokemon player. And most of my friends, myself included, would watch videos of people competing in the Pokemon trading card game of either other players or themselves, and basically watch footage of themselves playing the game and assessing every single play and seeing whether or not it was the right play objectively. And this is a lot easier said than done when you're kind of outside of the game, because when you're in the game and you're playing actively, it's actually extremely hard to allow biases and kind of thoughts that are happening live when you're in the mode of performance to kind of influence the outcomes that you're taking. And this can be extrapolated to all sorts of things. It doesn't just have to be in relation to things where you have to perform or it's gaming related. This can be applied to really anything in life. It can be applied to work, it can be applied to friendships and relationships, it can be applied to big moments, all of this stuff. And the importance here is, in the day-to-day, we make a lot of decisions and are maybe not necessarily consciously thinking about things, especially when anxiety or pressure or kind of, you're just kind of thrown into situations, or say you have like a big meeting where you're presenting. Sometimes it's kind of hard to, while you're in the meeting, remember the things that you were intending on saying or doing prior to being in the meeting. But it's really the part of, once the thing has concluded, taking time to reflect on what has actually occurred and thinking back about what could you have done differently. Did things go the way that you wanted them to? And really assessing how you could have approached that thing differently, and then taking the learnings and moving forward with it. So in 2025, I started journaling, partially because the thought of AI just erasing all of the need to write anything ever was a little scary to me, and so I wanted to have my own thoughts kind of written down in paper. But I actually turned this a little bit into more of a mechanism for myself to look at big moments in my life and reflect back on them and kind of take learnings from them. And so I use this in multiple different kind of periods throughout the year, some of them in relation to people that I met, relationships that I built, work events, experiences, travel, all sorts of stuff, where I could kind of take my experiences and, instead of, trying to catalog that moment in time while I'm in the thing, really taking the first kind of 24 hours after something big happens to sit down and reflect. And so one of the things that really happened to me is we went on a two-week vacation over the summer to Morocco, Spain, and Greece. And over that time, it was kind of the first time in the year where I had an extended period of time to kind of reflect on how I thought things were going in the year, how I thought things were going broadly in my life, and just kind of a way to like step back from the day-to-day hustle and bustle of just going to work and, doing all of that stuff. And so when I came back from that trip, the first thing I did was I sat down and got a notebook and started journaling my thoughts that I wanted to kind of capture from my experience on this trip. And some of the things that I wrote down were kind of guidelines for how I wanted to approach relationships and dating. I wanted to create boundaries in terms of how I like to approach work. I wanted to make sure that I was always focusing on health, because no matter how kind of vacation seeps in or other things that kind of dictate how our health ends up playing out, I always found that being kind of locked in and going to the gym and eating healthy ultimately made me feel better. And so there were a few things that while I was on vacation, I kind of thought about, really, are these things that are important to me, and how can I kind of think about it? And so instead of just letting them be fleeting thoughts that ended up kind of just, existing on the vacation, I came back and I wrote them down, and I was really honest with myself about how I felt about these things and what I wanted them to kind of mean to me going forward. And so I wrote them down in the notebook, and then I continued to carry them through my day-to-day life and was constantly reflecting on those things as time kind of went on. When other big moments would happen, whether it was a high pressure work event or kind of like a big deliverable that was coming up, I would kind of notate how I was feeling about it in the moment. And then once the thing actually occurred, write down my thoughts as fast as possible, within like a 24-hour time period to kind of capture what the result was. And part of this was a way to kind of build the ability to trust my instincts and see how those things played out. Because without record keeping in this way, or even making YouTube videos like this, there's no way for myself to kind of hold myself accountable in the future without having the real-time thoughts of what I actually thought in the time. And so one thing where this actually was super, super helpful is I was kind of going through this thing with work where I was trying to make a difficult decision. And so the difficult decision was, I have these partners who I'm working with, and, I'm not quite getting what I need out of them. I need them to submit information to me that informs how their budget is going to be used for the end of the year. And, it's really important that they do this because typically, if you're not going to use the budget that you've been allotted, the best situation as a finance organization is to reallocate those funds to a team or to other projects that are actually going to use them. That way you're not just holding money for really no reason. And so, I am a more junior employee, and the people that I am working with are very senior. And so my intuition from what I had seen kind of over the course of my time in work was that I don't actually think these people are going to use the money. The trend here is your friend and how that they are approaching this topic. We're not getting the answers and results that we want out of these people in terms of how we can kind of work with them to set the trend line for the rest of the year. And so I made a judgment call. I decided to work through my leadership and decrease this team's budget by $10 million so that other teams could use the funding because all year this team had not been using their funding. And so this was a pretty difficult decision to make because one, I directly had to communicate this to the people that I was working with. Two, I needed the backing of my leadership to kind of make this happen. And three, it was kind of new territory for me. I wasn't really familiar or used to being in a situation where I'm making a judgment call, having to go fully through with it, and it's going to impact how the business operates. And so lo and behold, of course, the team that received this news did not appreciate that a whole lot, but they actually agreed with the result as some of the trends that I had pointed out as to like why this was happening. They agreed that I was actually making the right decision and that they need to be more proactive about this situation, when it comes up. And so that has gained me a lot of respect with that team as it's I'm not someone that they can just push around anymore in terms of this subject. Like they have to be attentive to the things that are happening, otherwise it's going to impact how they are operating. And so the reason that I'm kind of highlighting this story is because throughout multiple times in this decision over the course of a couple weeks, kind of gathering my approach to how I wanted to approach this, I was extremely uncertain. What are they going to think of me? Is my leadership going to agree with my decision? Am I actually making the right decision for the business? And how is this going to come off when I have to communicate the result of this action? And all that uncertainty was making me think, well, maybe I should, not do this. Maybe I should just kind of keep things the way they are. Don't upset anybody. Like, let it be. And turns out, looking back, I 100% made the right decision, and now going forward, I have more confidence in these situations and a kind of a experience or a framework that I can use to do this in the future if it makes the right call, or just better understanding of how situations like this work and not allowing fear of other people's opinions and pressure to kind of get and take away from my objective and what I'm trying to do for the betterment of my career or also the company at large. And so without kind of having these checkpoints in time where I was writing down how this situation made me feel, what the result ended up being once I kind of made the decision, and that type of work, I wouldn't have been able to kind of go back in time and see exactly what I was thinking as I was kind of going through this, and then now objectively say I made the right call and I could do that in the future. And so this is something that's really, really interesting because the other situation could be the complete opposite in that I made the wrong call for a different situation. And so there are ways to kind of look at this journaling process as this is what I was thinking. And now that time has passed, I can go back and objectively say, this was either the right or wrong call. And so the way that they do this in Pokemon, as an example of where we're getting this kind of mindset from, is when you're playing a match of the Pokemon trading card game, there's hundreds of decisions that you're making at any given point. The deck that you're playing with is randomized, cards will come out, and you can't necessarily predict the order 100% of the time. There are, kind of laws with math in terms of the statistics of things that could happen. There are decisions that are typically going to net out to better outcomes based on statistics, but ultimately you have to make decisions hundreds of times within a game to reach an outcome that is favorable. And anything that your opponent does can also change how that works. And so in the moment, it's really hard, especially because you're timed on every single action that you're making, to be able to think fully through every single problem. And so if you're like one of the best players in the game, and one of the ways that you become one of the best players in the game is to record yourself playing and then watch back the footage of you playing and then assess objectively whether or not you made the right call at every single action. And you're not going to improve instantly, but over time, as you kind of do this, you trust your judgments better, you realize where your shortcomings are, and ultimately, if you continue doing it, it makes you one of the best players. And so one of my friends, who is one of the best players in the game, he has won multiple tournaments, multi-thousand person tournaments all over the world, he started watching these videos of not only himself play, but other people play. And he has watched every single match that has ever been recorded in the history of the Pokemon trading card game. And he went from being, a random nobody player, similar to me, to now he's one of the best players in the game. And this is a skill that he used to better himself and his playing ability just by watching his own mistakes. And so my guidance to the folks that are watching this video is to think about reflection as a powerful tool. You can also use this in conversation and in relationships with people. I just wrote Christmas cards for the year, as it's something that I really enjoy doing. I like to send my friends, a little gift, kind of wish them a Merry Christmas, and also reflect on how the past year has been. What am I thankful for them in my life and the friendship that I have with them? And so I wrote the cards all from the perspective of, what is the gift that this person kind of gave me in my life? Not only their presence, which of course is super valuable, but a ton of my friends represent different things and are important to me for different reasons. Some of them are great for encouragement and support. Some of them have taken me on travel adventures that I never would have been able to get before. Some of them push me in ways that are, a little bit less friendly than others, which ultimately leads me to live a different life. Some people push me out of my comfort zone in different subjects that doesn't have to be, business and career growth. It could be something like dating. And so kind of looking at this thing, I took the time to reflect and thank all of these people for their impact on my life as friends, but also from more of how things are changing in my life and what their impact is as a result of that. And so although holiday cards is something that's, some people do, for me it's kind of a fun exercise to say, like, look, it's been a year worth of time, 365 days, around Earth, and this doesn't happen all the time. What are the things that I'm thankful for that each of these people kind of contributed to my life, and the value that they bring? And it's not meant to be transactional. It's more just, thinking of the great times and the great memories. At this point in time, we were dealing with this problem, and here we are 6 months later, and that thing is no longer a problem. Or we were super happy about this, and now we're not happy about this. And so you can use reflection mechanisms like this to kind of dig out those insights. You can also use it to kind of build trust and get, new direction from people. And so I'm going to be rotating teams soon, taking a new opportunity abroad. And, I'm currently working for someone who I absolutely adore. He's been, a mentor of mine for a long time, and I'm sad to be leaving his team earlier than I expected. And one of the things that I kind of did as part of our kind of last official career development discussion before I rotate to this new team is I kind of asked to do a postmortem or reflection of the year as a whole. What are the things that went well? Where could I have done better? Questions that I had on my mind that were a little bit uncomfortable to ask in the heat of the moment. And through doing this, I got a 360 view of all of the things over the past year that I either had a hard time with or struggled with, some of the things that I thought we did successfully, and ultimately got a lot of insight as to how I can kind of approach different problems or different situations that I've been put in differently in the future based on, both of our analysis of this thing and being completely truthful and honest with each other. But at the same time, it also led to, new ways to think about different things that I wasn't really thinking about at the time, and new direction to pursue different paths, how to kind of think about different moves in the future and what ultimately could be a fun path for me to pursue. And all of this came from taking time to step back, take away from the day-to-day, and reflect on things that are important to me or the experiences that I've had in the last year. So with that out of the way, happy holiday seasons to you all. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. We just hit 150 subscribers, which is super great. I really appreciate it, all the support that we've gotten on this channel. And if you ever have any questions or want to reach out to someone for some help or advice, it's going to be will@jenkinswill.com. We'll see you all next week for the New Year's episode, but in the meantime, happy holidays, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.